I'm Isaac, and welcome to Stuff You Need to Know about Australian history. Today's episode will look at the European discovery of Australia, and more importantly, ask why did the British choose to settle Australia? Contrary to popular belief, James Cook was not the first European to stumble across Australia. Dutchman Willem Jansz became in 1606 the first confirmed non-Aboriginal person to see Australia, though there is evidence of Chinese, French and Portuguese explorers who predated him. Jansz was intending a voyage to New Guinea but became lost and sailed from Cape York Peninsula down the western coast of Queensland to Cape Keervere. It was at Cape Keervere that he came into conflict with an Aboriginal tribe and 10 of his crew members were killed. It was at this point Jansz decided that the land and the people were too inhospitable and discontinued any further exploration. Around 200 years later, the British government decided to establish a penal colony in Australia. The crime rate was high in the United Kingdom for a number of reasons, most of which can be linked back to the Industrial Revolution. Large crowded cities provided a welcoming environment for pickpockets and petty thieves. Furthermore, cities provided the motivation to commit crime as well as the means. The construction of cities required that farms that had previously been on the land be closed, and many people lost their income. 1 out of 9 people in England at the time were poor. Amongst all this, no one had fought to invent the police force, so the law was enforced by vigilantes, most of whom were past their prime. Another issue was the sheer broadness of the penal code. There were 160 capital offences, some of which were major, like murder and treason, and some of which were mild, like shoplifting. I'm not making this up. In 18th century London, you could be hanged for shoplifting.
Boy, you there!
The high crime rate was particularly problematic when coupled with the ineffective prison system. Prisons were overcrowded, rotting and unhygienic, with typhus being a particular problem. The rotting walls of jails meant that many prisoners had to be chained down to prevent their escape. The major alternatives to jails were public hangings, which had the unfortunate side effect of creating a festive atmosphere rather than a threatening one, and transportation. Transportation was the involuntary migration of migrants to America to work as labourers. The judge would set the length of the sentence, usually 7 to 14 years or for life. This worked really well for the British government and would have kept working well if not for the American Revolution. For some inexplicable reason, the Americans believed resolutely that independence meant they no longer had to accept British convicts and ceased to do so after 1783. After plans to build new prisons proved to be too expensive and the storage of prisoners in rotting ships called hulks proved ineffective, the government decided it needed a new penal colony and selected Botany Bay, New South Wales. It had been assessed by Captain Cook in 1770, who deemed it suitable for farming. Australia was also a geographically strategic location, good for repairing ships and supplying them. Additionally, Australia was on the other side of the world from the British Isles, making a return trip greatly less than convenient. So it was decided. In August 1786, the British government sent the first fleet out to New South Wales. They would arrive on the 26th of January 1788. Unfortunately for the British, the land was not nearly as suitable for farming as Cook would have had them believe, with a climate hot and not remotely like that of Britain's or Ireland's. It was not until the settlement made it over the Blue Mountains that more farmable land was found. More importantly, they clashed with the locals. Despite some early attempts by Governor Philip Arthur to befriend Bellelong of the Eora Indigenous group, relations between British settlers and Indigenous Australians were disastrous. The Indigenous people were less than thrilled at having their land stolen, and the British grew unhappy at Aboriginal raids on white farms. The Aboriginals did not understand the British concept of agriculture, and the British did not understand the Aboriginals' lack of agriculture. The conflict between the British and Indigenous groups is now known as the Australian Frontier Wars. It claimed approximately 2,500 British lives, which pales in comparison to the estimated minimum of 20,000 Indigenous lives lost in the Australian Frontier Wars between 1788 and 1934. The British had 2 major advantages. The first is technological. Bringing a spear to a gunfight isn't a winning strategy. The second was disease. With European settlers importing smallpox, influenza and the common cold amongst other diseases to which the Indigenous Australians had no immunity. This all made continued British expansion relatively easy. The colony of Van Diemen's Land, now Tasmania, was established in 1825 and there were attempts to wipe out the entire Indigenous population there. Despite this, there are still descendants of the Indigenous Tasmanians living on Flinders Island today. Western Australia was founded in 1829 as a free colony, but the settlers decided they quite liked the idea of cheap convict labour, leaving South Australia to become the only colony settled entirely by free settlers in 1836. Victoria was separated from New South Wales in 1851 and Queensland was established in 1859. It was the gold rushes that really helped to put Australia on the map, but that's a story for next time. Hope to see you then, and thanks for watching.